All right, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the Asia Pacific region. Welcome to our webinar from Tool Confusion to Communication Fusion, Practical AI in Comms. This is actually our first webinar for the Asia Pacific time zone, and we've partnered with our friends at Sandpiper, based out of Singapore, to present you this webinar. We'll just give some of the folks a few minutes to make their way in. And it'll be very interesting to know, there's just so much diversity across the Asia Pacific region. It'll be interesting to know where some of you are from, or, are some of you from Australia, Singapore, elsewhere in Asia. So if you can just pop in the chat, just a quick shout out as to where you're from, where you're coming in from. That'll just be interesting to see the wide distribution of the internal comms community and comms community in general here across the region. All right, super. So we got Finn from New Zealand. Awesome. I was there in New Zealand a few months ago. Beautiful country. Got a few, of course, from Australia. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into it. So a quick review at the agenda. So we'll do a quick intro, and our objective for this webinar is for you, by the end of it, to walk away with knowledge of the latest trends and best practices in the world of AI and comms, strategy as to how to implement it in your organization and in your internal comms practice or general comms practice. And then finally, we'll take some questions and answers. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll feel really good and inspired about beginning to use AI in your practice. Quickly, a little bit about Staffbase. We're hosting this. We are the world's largest internal communication software company. We've won multiple awards. We have about 2,200 global customers, and we reach 50 million employees through our internal communication tools. A little bit about me. Why am I presenting this webinar? So I'm head of APAC marketing at Staffbase, and I was recently on the advisory board at the Generative AI Summit, where I did a masterclass on how to use AI in marketing and communications. And over to you, Rob.
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Rob. I'm the head of strategy and innovation at Sandpiper. I head up the digital team over there and launched our AI service offering early this year. But my interest and passion for AI probably goes back to 2017 when I launched School of Disruption, which was really to educate people and companies about all the emerging technologies, from AI to blockchain to IoT to 3D printing and so on. I also am developing an AI guidance for the PR industry, which will be launched next week. And we did the first AI and comms report, which I'll talk about later as well. So very pleased to be here and to present this webinar with David. Very briefly about Sandpiper, for those that may not know us, we're the biggest independent comms and public affairs agency in APAC. We have 8 offices. I'm based in Singapore, our headquarters. We're also in Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, China. We also opened up actually beyond APAC just recently. About 150 people, quite award-winning. You'll see some of these just from this year on the right of the slide, but don't want to go into too much detail from that end. But I actually asked ChatGPT, how should I kick off, right? How should we kick off this webinar to a group of marketing and comms professionals? And it actually told me to start off with a funny quote about how everyone is talking about AI, but no one really understands it, right? Which I think is still fairly true. In the end, I really love this cartoon of Tom Fishburne. For those that are already reading it, he's basically saying, okay, there's so many things we don't know about AI and Gen AI, like, okay, how much is it making up? What jobs or tasks is it going to take away? What are the risks? How is it going to damage our reputation? But the only thing that we do know is that we want to implement it everywhere as fast as possible, right? Which I think is a lot of the sentiment of businesses today. And we actually did a research report early this year, which was the first global report analyzing the adoption and perception of AI amongst comms professionals. So we served about 400 professionals, and actually what was interesting is that most did see it as a big opportunity. Many were already using it, about 2 in 3 were already using it in their day-to-day work. But at the same time, so many people were using it, but they did feel as well that their leadership team, they were not acting fast enough, they didn't understand it well enough. But also people were using it, but no one had a policy in place for actual effective and safe usage. Right, and even this report was launched in March of this year. Similar reports like the Marketing State of AI, which was done in Singapore of September, actually had pretty much the same results. We did another survey, which I'll talk about next week as well, and the results are actually fairly similar to the first one we did. And what is important, I think, is that the marketing and the comms industry is really seen to be one of the first, but also the heaviest to be impacted by AI and generative AI. So I'm going to high level talk about 8 trends and opportunities. The first one being that everyone is now really becoming a creator, right? So we've been talking about the creator economy for many years, but generative AI has really supercharged this, right? That's really democratized access to these tools. So there's a video of someone that's editing a Nike ad in 45 minutes. So let's have a look at what he does. And he uses a bunch of different tools, right? GPT-4, Midjourney, Runway itself, Trinity for music, and a voiceover 11 Labs. So let's have a quick look at the output. If you can quickly show the previous output, second part of the video.
It's courage. It's determination. It's unity. It's in us all. Unleash it.
This is a small part of the ad itself, but it's actually really impressive what you could do in just 45 minutes itself. Secondly, I think as well, there's many marketing companies are using Gen AI in their advertising as well. It's always funny to see Ryan Gosling being one of the first to adopt these emerging technologies. We saw Coca-Cola, of course, with Diwali last week, where you could create your own, Diwali-inspired ads with Coke, oats. Let people create basically brought recipes to life using Gen AI. And same in the middle, the video you see playing is, like a fashion brand that actually brought a concept to life. So they ideated the concept using Midjourney, brought it to life with their designers, and it's now visible in the store in Amsterdam. So but there's hundreds of really inspiring use cases already being done today. So the second trend, before going there as well, is I play around with these tools, of course, quite a lot. It's an old example, honestly, but I used to work for a big automotive company that sold like Ferrari, Maserati, Jaguar, but also Mustangs. And we did a lot of photo shoots and video shoots, right? And these cost anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So one like example you see on the left, right? It's just an example of any kind of car photo shoot of a Mustang. I tried to recreate this just in Midjourney, right? With a very simple prompt, orange Mustang driving towards me in a mountainous landscape, ultra realistic 4K. And this is the first thing that actually came up without even any editing. So, even though the quality is definitely not there, it's not for production, it's not production quality yet, but, just imagine what will be possible a year from now, right? And how this will impact content production. And it's really linked to the second trend as well, right? That the quality is so rapidly improving. I think there's a great visual example of Midjourney, this image creation tool, where you see the evolution of Feb 22 to May 23. So it's not even the latest version that we have today, but the speed of change and the quality of the portrait of Scarlett Johansson from just in a period of 1 year is drastic, right? And I think that's really something we need to keep in mind, this exponential speed of change. And, I really love this quote of Bill Gates. He has a few popular ones. I'm just going to focus on the bottom one, where he just says that, we need to keep in mind that whatever limitations AI and generative AI has today is going to be gone before we know it, right? And it was illustrated on the last slide as well. So even though you may have been dabbling with AI, ChatGPT, and all the other ones, you may have not gotten the results you like, but that is today, right? 1 month from now, that may have completely changed as well. The trend is multimodal capabilities, and I mean 2 things with this. On one end, it is going from one input to a different output. So let's say you go from text to video, you go from image to motion, maybe from video to virtual reality, and vice versa. But it also means that many of the tools today you see integrating multiple output formats into the same platform, right? So tools that are not singular for just text outputs or just video outputs or just image outputs, but actually combine many of these together. And that's a great example of Blockade Labs. Two examples. The above one is actually with a text prompt. You create a virtual world. And the bottom one is for game design. So you saw him draw a grid, right? And then just with a single prompt, he created this futuristic game environment just in seconds. They actually launched a few really good videos this week as well. So definitely a company to look into. And as what I said, right, these tools are integrating multiple media outputs in the same platform. So GPT-4 just recently, of course, did this, right, where you first had to select, Del-E was initially separate. Then browsing with the internet was also a separate drop-down menu. Now it's all into the same single prompt. And you see this with many tools, this integration and consolidation of different techniques. Fourthly, AI agents. This is really about autonomous agents, meaning you're going to give it a task. The AI is going to analyze this task and break it down into maybe 10, 20, 50 subtasks. And it's going to activate these one by one, all by itself, without human involvement, right? So, and it's going to link up with different tools as well. So you may have a task about creating a marketing campaign. It's going to say this, we need to do 20 different things. And it's going to connect all the tools, anything from image tools to maybe text tools to linking with your CRM system, all by itself. And the video you see here is actually just where a person goes from a single text prompt. He creates an ebook. He creates images for every chapter of the ebook. Then he exports the ebook to an actual ebook format and publishes it on an ebook website for downloading as well, right? With a single prompt. This is a very simple example, but these AI agents is really a big trend for what we'll be seeing in next months and years. Business integration, right? So of course we see a move away from public platforms, right? So of course you may have tested ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and all these kind of tools, but you really see a lot of enterprise versions. ChatGPT launched their own enterprise version, by the way, as well. But there's also a lot of open source models, right? That big companies are using. So models available on the internet that they can actually customize for their own needs within the business. So there's two things here as well. So one, you have these custom large language models that can actually be built upon your own data, right? Your own financial reports, your own trends, your own writing, your own brand guidelines, tone of voice, all your own documentation, but also personal LLMs, right? So think about a large language model just for yourself, right? Based on your tone of voice, based on the research you want to put in, based on maybe, your own personal data. And this is a really big trend we see also come to life definitely in the last week and 2 weeks. So if you look at the next slide as well, so we saw ChatGPT launch GPTs just recently, which are all kind of an example of these personal LLMs. This is a super simple example where you just add in your city, right? Let's say you're from Brisbane or from Singapore, like I. It writes a poem while the image is being created about Singapore. And if you read, it's actually very interesting where it picks up different locations in Singapore and its characteristics. But also the image was actually really good, where you see the kopi, the coffee, you see people with an umbrella, even though the sun is kind of shining because it's always raining in Singapore. You see those shop houses. And this is just, people can make these in 5 minutes, right? It's so easy to make these GPTs. And this will be a very powerful tool also in the months to come. 6, a bit linked to business integration. So bringing these tools within the company is also integrating them into the workflow, right? We see this with the Office suite. So, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but also Google Workspace or Google Docs, Google Sheets. All of these are integrating AI within the tools themselves. So you don't need to go to external tools, but while you're writing in Word, you can just add a prompt and it's going to optimize your copy. Same thing with Slack. And what you actually notice with these workflows is for the moment, companies are really focusing on, internal use cases, right? That are really focused, but also low risk. And I think one main reason for this is that there are so many tools out there. There's literally thousands of tools. And many companies are a bit hesitant to invest money, time, resources into tools that may not work out, that may be replaced by another one, of course, in a few weeks. And it's not just internal tools like Word and PowerPoint. Of course, it's also the tools you may be using on a daily basis, right? So think about Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, the advertising suite. They have a thing called Meta AI Sandbox. Google has something similar called Google Performance Max. So basically, they let you create ads, different copy variants, different image variants in real time, and it's going to optimize for the best performing, so the one that gets the most click-through and maybe gets the best sales. So this generative AI aspect, adding into these advertising platforms, is really powerful to drive cost efficiencies. Same thing with the CRM system and Salesforce. And I think the seventh trend is really, maybe one that people are less familiar with. It's really bridging online and offline. So this first example is, it's interactive augmented reality almost, right? So you draw a grid in the real world. You add in a prompt, so like this futuristic whatever landscape with a rainbow and air balloons, and then it's actually going to visualize this prompt through your phone in augmented reality, right? The second video is also you can overlay objects in real time. So here it says Shrek with an accordion. So you see a statue, you add in a prompt, and it's going to overlay the statue with what you say as a prompt, right? The third one goes even a step further, and it's really bringing objects to life in 3D. So you add in a prompt, well, you draw something like a mushroom, you add in a prompt, it's going to make a beautiful mushroom, and then you pull out this mushroom in a 3D element, which you can then maybe use in whatever other environment, right, and placed around the room. So I think this online to offline, there's so many creative ways where you can, have your users, your customers interact with your building, with your products, with your campaigns, and so on, but very underutilized at the moment. And also online to offline, right? We recently saw the launch of this, AI pin. Pretty sure many of you have seen this. So a thing that you attach to your clothing, let's say as an example, and it brings AI, generative AI, into the real world, right? So it can project like when you get a call on your hand, you can, it is voice enabled as well. So it's a very expensive tool. It's $700, I believe, still today. It's going to definitely get cheaper. It's going to get a lot better. I don't think this is going to work out, honestly, right? But the thing is, this is a first product, right? These are the ground breakers, let's say. And it's very interesting to see how AI will be embedded in our offline lives as well, right, in the coming years. And will this eventually replace mobile or not? Or will it be in addition to this? It's very interesting to look into this one. The last trend is more an overarching one, right? Basically saying that all these emerging technologies like AI, they are eventually becoming invisible, right? Sometimes they say they become like electricity. So that means that we go from what may feel very new today to what's going to feel very normal tomorrow, right? So just imagine when these tools integrate into, again, your Word and your Office and everything you use today, you're not going to think about this is AI, right? It's embedded in the daily workflow. And that gives a lot of opportunity, but it also brings a lot of risk, right? Because in the end, we may, if AI is embedded in the background, we may not critically think about the output, right? So what decisions is it making for me? What data is it actually using? And I think we always need to keep that critical thinking hat on, regardless of where we are in this AI maturity journey. And before handing over to David, right? We always say it's human plus AI or AI plus human collaboration, right? So don't consider this as a replacement, of course, but it's really a productivity improvement tool. So there was many studies about this. This is an older one, again, where for marketing professionals, they estimated that generative AI could save them about 5 hours per week. But this is still more than 1 month per year, right? I saw like a few weeks ago, BCG did their own analysis, like this consulting firm, and they said they did a pilot, people that used Gen AI products, they were up to 40% more efficient than those that weren't using it, right? So again, it's an addition to, it's an augmentation tool itself, and very powerful. And David is going to talk about a few use cases as well, about how you can actually use Gen AI in your day-to-day already today. Before getting there, sorry, David, I still have a few slides on the strategy part as well. So of course, these are all the trends, but how do we now actually get started, right? And there's a lot we can talk about here, but I'm going to focus on a few elements, right? I'm going to focus on 4 pieces, which is 1, understanding opportunities across the journey, focusing on actual tangible business value, designing for trusted AI, and then experimentation. Let's talk about understanding opportunities. So there's a lot of opportunities, as we've seen already in these trends. When I say user journey, there's 2 things. One is you as a user within your own company, internal comms, for example, but also with your external customers, right? What's the customer journey, and where can AI help our customers? So there's a lot of benefits, like speeding up research. You can organize the information, generate ideas, writing drafts, creating new content, rewriting content, translations. There's so many opportunities, which translates to anything from writing a social media post to your press releases to more efficient media monitoring. And we'll talk about more of these later in the presentation as well. But it's really understanding what are the opportunities in my current tasks. What am I doing? What's my team doing? What's our company doing? And where can AI help? So if you go to the next slides. It's really about opportunity mapping, right? So what you often call task mapping is really, again, mapping out all the tasks on different levels. Again, what I said in your role as maybe an internal comms person or marketing person in your own department and in your organization, and then seeing where could AI or generative AI really drive value, right? A lot of this about cross-fertilization between departments, so working together with your colleagues from different departments, different functions, and seeing where can we augment, again, this human capability, right? And not necessarily just replace everything we do itself, right? What are the biggest challenges we face in the business? What are the biggest gaps? Where do we want to go, right? So what's the current state of the business, and what's our desired state in the future, where we want to be in the end? So it's on 3 levels: on strategy and planning, indeed, on measurement, and on execution, where you're going to be mapping these tasks. So once you've done this, basically, it's really about, okay, there's so many ideas you will be getting, right? But where can we maximize, basically, business value, right? How can we select the right use cases, right? So this is really about prioritization. And that can be done in many ways, right? These are examples that I put on the slide. So for example, you can prioritize these ideas based on how are they aligned with the key business problem we have, right? The key challenges we face. How do we see our business becoming competitive in the future, right? And how is it aligned with these priorities? What's the actual business impact, right? And typically that's on 2 levels. Either it's going to drive revenue or it's going to save us costs, right? But also, what are the resource requirements? How much manpower do we need? How much talent do we need to hire? What tech do we need to implement? Do we have the right data? Do we have the right infrastructure? But also sometimes use cases that are just maybe are just going to lift the overall readiness level of our whole organization, right? Meaning it's going to be a thing that's going to inspire everyone across departments, and it's going to really drive the second and the third and the fourth project as well. So on the next slide, I have an example of this framework I've often used in the past as well, which is very simple on 2 axes. One is importance, and one is feasibility, right? So importance means what's value to the team, to the department, to the business. And feasibility is how feasible is it from, again, a manpower point of view, a technical point of view, a talent point of view, a cost point of view. So you're really going to prioritize and map out all these ideas on this kind of a grid. And then you're going to say, okay, if the feasibility is very high and the importance to the business or to the team is high, it may be a must do, right? So you can prioritize a small number of initiatives, focus on these quick wins where you can solve these pressing problems, and of course afterwards get alignment with your leadership team on these priorities that you've mapped out. Thirdly, and this is a webinar by itself, honestly, it's designing for trusted AI, right? It's really all about ethics. And if you look at this iceberg, I think so many people are talking about AI content today and getting things out of there. But people forget about, what's below the bottom of the iceberg, right? What's hidden, which is the whole governance element behind adopting AI in the enterprise. So, we need to really strive for ethical AI, for responsible AI. Again, you see a few things what that means. For example, developing this AI policy, right? That's really linked with existing policies in the organization, and vetted by legal and compliance. It's about involving stakeholders across the business, right? A lot is about training and upskilling, and we'll come back to that. It's also about, this human in the loop, meaning, okay, we will implement AI, but we'll always make sure that a person is actually vetting every single output, right? So before anything gets published, goes live, a human will have seen it and reviewed it. Right? It's about data protection, putting these measures in place. There's a lot of issues with data being released in the public. It's also adapting to any regulation that's coming up or that already exists, right? Whether that's GDPR in Europe or whether that's more AI relevant regulations in Asia. And often it's about having these internal champions, right? Big companies, you see them setting up task forces or committees around AI. Smaller companies, they just have internal champions that really try to drive adoption and get people aligned. As said, we're developing an AI guidance with IPRS as well for the PR comms industry. We're doing a webinar next Tuesday on this one. For those that want to sign up, you can scan the QR code, definitely. Otherwise, feel free to reach out and we'll send you a link. But also, of course, we do a lot on these capability buildings, right? Anything from awakening sessions for your executive teams to really wake them up around the opportunity for AI, to really more practical use cases on how do you now embed AI into your workflow, right? And how can you tweak so you get better results than what you were getting today. Plus, of course, the governance aspect about, helping companies implement these policies and guidelines and frameworks basically itself. Do scan the QR code. And otherwise, I said, feel free to drop a note, or I can put maybe a link later in the chat as well. And lastly, it's really about experimentation, right? So you need to walk the talk. We talk so much about these things, but if you don't try it out, you don't know the strengths, you don't know the weaknesses, you don't know how effective a prompt is or what may work better. So people start with proof of concepts, right? POCs, in often a bit more controlled environment. What they call also sandboxes in bigger companies. You use feedback to really refine how the application works. And if it works, if it proves the value, then you're going to scale up, right? Then you're maybe going to roll it out to a different department, maybe organization-wide. And all the time you share your learnings, right? You capture these learnings. Maybe you capture the best prompts in kind of like a prompt guide for your own company, right? And in the end, experimentation can be done individually, but also it's bringing this culture within your business, right? Culture of experimentation and continuous learning. It's really crucial. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Dave to talk about some of these use cases you can try yourself after this webinar.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. All right, well, let's take a look at some use cases and what those would look like. Just a broad overview of some use cases that I've identified in the realm of internal comms. Now, me being working for Staffbase, I do take more of an internal comms focus. So most of these will be related to internal comms. So the top 6 that I see are research and ideation. Just rapidly being able to research compliance policies, as an example, or generating a high volume of ideas and then selecting the top ones. Strategic planning, again, idea generation for different strategies, and scenario analysis for different communication outcomes. The content creation, of course, which Rob touched on earlier. But not only can you produce content, but it's some of you have likely already started using it for editing and proofreading as well. Employee engagement, that's one of the biggest challenges for internal comms is, how do you cut through? How do you reach your employees? AI can do wonders when it comes to personalization, personalizing messages. And there's also, with employee engagement, you often have to analyze data from a large number of employees, and AI can help you do that and summarize and analyze employee feedback very quickly for you. 5th, stakeholder and change management. We had a few of you asking about how to use AI in this context through the questions that were submitted before the webinar. So a couple things you could do here is developing tailored communication strategies for different stakeholders, different departments, doing a stakeholder analysis for targeted communication. And lastly, crisis comms. This is probably one of the, in my opinion, where AI really it can be very helpful due to the speed at which you have to work at when it comes to crisis comms. So, drafting initial crisis responses, creating an FAQ for inquiries for all your teams, and much more. Let's jump into each one of these, and I'll show you an example of how we might apply AI to these areas. Before we do, I just want to explain that we're going to focus primarily on ChatGPT, the latest version of ChatGPT, which was updated just a couple of weeks ago. And the reason we're focusing on this is because it really is a Swiss Army knife of AI. It can pretty much do everything. It's very accessible. Most of you already have access to it. So for that reason, I'm not going to introduce AI tools that are really out there and hard to access. I'm focusing on this AI tool that most of you already have access to. Some of you even have an enterprise version. And this can really do most things that you need an AI to do. It can generate images, it can process data, pretty much covers most of the bases. And then I'll touch on Staffbase Companion, which is our own AI purpose-built for internal comms. And the reason we're briefly going to touch on this is because our community and our prospects have expressed interest. So we'll briefly touch on that as well. But let's jump into the first use case. So research in the realm of comms. ChatGPT just, as Rob mentioned, now by default has access to the internet. They also updated their knowledge base up to April 2023. And this is really great because if you need to do rapid research on an extensive amount of data from the internet, and let's say, or if you need to research policy documents or statistics, you can do that very quickly and synthesize them very quickly into key insights. I'll show you what that looks like. So here I've asked ChatGPT to find the latest stats on remote work, on employee engagement in the tech industry, and I've asked it to organize the findings in a table so that I can easily share it and present it to others. So here we go. Here's the table that it's produced, and it has cited the websites and links and sources where it has retrieved this information from. So if I hover over these links, you'll see, there you go. That's Gallagher, that's Forbes, Gallagher, Forbes, LinkedIn, and so on. What I just showed you was, sorry, I just want to now show you how you would use this in strategic planning with a very basic short prompt. So here, what I've asked of it is, I'm creating strategies for a certain campaign to boost environmental awareness among our employees. Can you provide me a communication plan with ideas and engagement tactics, and what channels should I use? That's also very key. So here we go. It breaks down each one of those, gives me some engagement ideas, and then what channels I should use. For example, internet, email, physical signage. And then how would I implement this? And what you could, of course, do is you could follow up each of these areas with additional prompts and ask it to expand on each of these areas. Within strategic planning, there's also scenario analysis. Here, I'm going to use a more advanced prompt. And many of you might have heard the term prompt engineering, and that is basically optimizing prompts to get the right outputs. So here's some tips for how to write effective prompts, how to quote unquote engineer effective prompts. One, initially what you want to do is you want to be very clear. You want to be brief. You want to make sure that your questions are asked sequentially. Sometimes it's good to ask the questions not all in one prompt, but sequentially in separate prompts. So, you might ask it to give you a strategy, and then ask it a follow-up question and a follow-up question in separate prompts. You always want to be very specific. In this context of scenario analysis, we want to give it a detailed scenario. We want to detail the scenario that we wanted to analyze. And then if you want to go further, also set the expectation for what you want the output to be like. Perhaps give it a couple of examples as guides. And like I said, be iterative and give it feedback and go back and forth and build on your chat with the AI. I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see this is a much longer prompt than what I showed you before, because here I've applied those best practices. So I've given it the context of the scenario. I've asked it to analyze a few different scenarios, and here is the output. So in the scenario of positive reaction, what messages do we want to use? What channels do we want to use? What follow-up actions? If there's an uncertain reaction scenario, again, how do we want to respond to that? And then finally, the third scenario, which was the negative reaction. How would we respond to that? So a longer prompt, but it got me a very nice and easy to work with output. Moving on to employee engagement, how would you use AI in employee engagement? I think a very good use case is using its data analysis capabilities. So nowadays with ChatGPT, you can actually upload an Excel or CSV file with data, and very quickly you can extract actionable insights from that data. And then you can also organize the table, the raw data, into tables or other easier to read formats. Just a caution here. Rob mentioned this earlier. ChatGPT is of course public, so any data you put into it is used for further training. So you don't want to put any sensitive data in there. If you do really want to use it for sensitive data, some of you already have the enterprise version of ChatGPT, which keeps your data private. And if you don't, I would recommend looking into it. What would that look like? So here I've uploaded some employee engagement survey data. So here I'm uploading the file. So I've uploaded the file, and I've asked it to analyze the data and extract key insights and produce a table for me. So there I've uploaded, and here is the output. All right, apologies, not sure what happened to this clip, but what the output here would have been basically a summary of the data and a table, an analysis on the data that I uploaded in just a few minutes. Moving on to stakeholder and change management. Rob mentioned earlier something about GPT builders, where you can create your own custom GPTs with no coding skills required. You can build it through conversation, just like you would, let's say, if you had your own AI engineer and you wanted an AI engineer working for you to build you a custom AI. You would just talk to it, and you would just talk to that person. And similarly, you can do that here with the new GPT builder, which was announced just a couple of weeks ago. OpenAI has created some of their own custom GPTs. For example, they have a writing coach that's optimized for writing. They have a math mentor, and so on. They have a sticker whiz that helps turn your dreams into stickers. What we can use it for in this context of stakeholder and change management is role play. And I had a few people asking me as to how you would do this before the webinar. So you could role play with different stakeholders to find out how they would react to, let's say, your ideas or your proposals. How would they respond? Would they buy in to your proposal, etc., by role playing with an AI that you've created that is role playing that particular stakeholder persona. So here's how you would do that. So the latest version of ChatGPT, you'll see an Explore section on the left. This is the GPT builder. And you can see I've built a few, and there's a few already that OpenAI has built. And here you would basically chat with it. And just by talking to it, it will create your own custom GPT. Here I've created a CEO who likes to talk about internal comms. So it's a Fortune 500 CEO who guides communication managers with strategic advice. You could ask it questions like, how do I create alignment between our internal comms teams and our external comms teams? Or hey, how would you respond to this proposal, for example? And you could, let's say, upload proposal file, whatever file format it is. And of course, crisis comms. Like I said, crisis comms, this is where speed is paramount. And that's where AI can come in, where AI can make a big impact in terms of how fast you need to get things done. So Rob touched on this briefly earlier with GPT agents, but where GPT can now actually take actions and do things. And one use case here is where we're going to use an automated workflow that we use ChatGPT to create for us with a Zapier integration. Zapier is basically a plugin for ChatGPT that allows you to create interaction between 5,000 different apps like Google Sheets, Gmail, HubSpot, Salesforce, etc. And so what you could do with this is you can automate alerts to responses to manage crises effectively, detect issues, analyze, generate fast summaries, make sure your messaging is consistent and unified across all your platforms. And I'll show you an example here. What we're going to do here is we're going to analyze a Google form responses with ChatGPT and post the summary to, let's say, a dedicated Slack channel for that crisis where employees can come and get latest information on that crisis. So here I've installed the ChatGPT plugin, the Zapier plugin. And the way you do this is you just go to the plugin store. There's many plugins here. You want to search for Zapier. So there we go. You just hit the install button. I've already installed it, of course. And now without needing to code, you can talk to ChatGPT and it will use Zapier to do the coding for you in creating that automated workflow. So it's outlined what it's done, what it's created, and it's given me a link to that Zap, as they call it. And here's the Zap. So here's a 3-step Zap, and I just have to sign into my Google Forms account, my Slack account, and it will connect all these actions and automate all these actions. So when, let's say, employees fill out a Google form about let's say their questions on a crisis, ChatGPT can automatically analyze the responses, summarize them, post them into a Slack channel, for example, or anything else that you might want to gather through your Google form or any type of form throughout a crisis. And then you just publish this through Zapier. Finally, let's look into content creation. Firstly, let's look at AI image generation. Rob already touched this, but here's the use case for employee recognition. So what I've done here is, with employees, you want to really celebrate their individual roles, their achievements, their personalities, their hobbies, etc. And one nice way to do this is to create, let's say, cartoons or avatars of employees, just to visually represent each team member's unique journey. So here's a cartoon of a specific employee that I described, who created this app, EcoTrack app, and he's won the award for Innovator of the Year. And I did that just with a few sentences. How do you get images like Rob showed you earlier? First of all, in these report that Rob and Sandpiper did, they asked which AI tools are you familiar with, comms people. 13% of you were familiar with Midjourney. Unfortunately, Midjourney is complex and costly. 13% of you were familiar with DALL-E 2, which wasn't as good. 9% of you were familiar with Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion, however, has a very steep learning curve. And then none of these were able to generate accurate text. Fortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, DALL-E 3 came out, and it's built into ChatGPT. And that allows you to streamline image creation with accurate text rendering right within ChatGPT. And if I go back here, you can see that it was able to generate accurate text, Innovator of the Year, on the banner and on the mobile phone that he's holding as well. So that's what's great about this latest version of DALL-E built into ChatGPT. And how do you generate those photorealistic images? Here's just some best practices. Describe the style. So for example, you might say, I want an impressionist painting. Describe the composition and the setting, the where it takes place, the mood, etc. Pick a style or a genre. Let it know what the lighting needs to look like, what the color palette needs to look like, what kind of camera was it shot on, what angle would focus. Do you want it realistic? Do you want it abstract? Maybe use some artistic references, like say for example, create a photorealistic image in the style of a Van Gogh painting, for example. So just 7 tips on how to get the most out of DALL-E's or any other or Midjourney's image generation. And I'll show you an example of what that would look like. So here within ChatGPT, I've applied those 7 best practices in my prompt. And as you can see, the output is a very photorealistic image of a German Shepherd. And it's just the way I described it. So, the background's blurred, the texture is capturing the dog's fur, the lighting is natural, there's a soft glow. These are things that I asked for, and as you can see, it produced everything that I asked for in quite a photorealistic way. And I'll just zoom into it just so you can get a closer look at it. There you go. This really blew my mind when this came out a few weeks ago. So ChatGPT can now see things. So you can now upload images and it can analyze images, detect patterns, recognize text on photos, illustrations. It can intelligently interpret what's on that image, and can really work with different formats: photos, charts, infographics, drawing, whiteboard sketches. And how would you use this for internal comms? Well, you could use it to enhance content. For example, if you have a very basic, let's say, diagram that you drew up on a whiteboard and you want that to be converted to something, let's say, prettier, you can do that. You can just take a photo of that whiteboard, upload it to ChatGPT, ask it to interpret and convert into, let's say, something more artistic if you want. You can also use this for synthesizing vast amounts of information from, let's say, internal reports or infographics. And it's also really great for creative repurposing. So you can upload, let's say, an image or an infographic and ask it to create a blog based off of that infographic. And that's actually what I've done here. This is an infographic from our Comms Club event earlier this week. We had a live sketch done representing all the ideas that our panelists spoke about and our speakers spoke about. So I've uploaded that image, and very simply, you can see in just one line, I've said, hey, for the Staffbase blog, please write a blog post based off of this infographic. And it's gone ahead and done that very accurately, I must say. So this really blew my mind. And it's just a very powerful use case here. And as you can see, it's produced a very good blog article, actually. Of course, you could further iterate this. But this was a very impressive feature, and that's one example of how you would use it. Finally, I'll just go over AI's text generation capability. Most of you are already familiar with this. You've used ChatGPT to help you write stuff or draft stuff or revise stuff. I want to introduce Staffbase Companion because we've purpose-built this for internal comms professionals, and it's built into our platform. And we built it like a personal assistant, so you can use it for brainstorming, as a brainstorming partner for just getting over writer's block, coming up with catchier titles and teasers, creating quick summaries, or optimizing style and structure. And here's what our editor looks like. So here's the different things that you can do within the platform. You can insert text, you can insert a prompt, generate, adjust tone, summarize, etc. For example, here, I've just asked it to kickstart an idea and just give me a few lines. In the back, you can see it's done that. Here, I've asked it for a teaser and a title. For this, we're going back to the Office campaign, and here's a bunch of titles and teasers that it's come up with. Here, I've asked it to summarize this body of text, and there you go. There's a short summary. Here I've asked it to optimize what I just wrote, and there you go. And you can be more descriptive, of course, if you want, with how you want it to optimize. So that's how you would use Staffbase Companion. And the other great feature of Staffbase Companion is that, like I mentioned earlier, it's an enterprise-ready version of AI hosted by Microsoft. You don't need additional logins or tokens or a ChatGPT login, so it's compliant, your data safe, and it's scalable. So just a preview of our Staffbase Companion tool for text generation, which many of you have already started using ChatGPT, but you might have the hesitation of concerns about your uploading sensitive data. Well, to get around that, you can adopt a enterprise-ready AI like Staffbase Companion or other tools that Rob mentioned, like, for example, Salesforce, etc. Rob, back over to you.
Hey, hi guys. I was just typing in the chat. Apologies, but yeah, quickly on the learning journey. So a bit of a recap of what we said before, right? So of course you can be experimenting. You will likely have been experimenting this last year. I think they're actually celebrating ChatGPT's 1-year anniversary, like in a week or two. But yeah, it's really first about understanding the basics of AI and Gen AI, right? Like, what are the use cases? What are the limitations? What are potential risks? And really then, of course, diving into what are now applications for communications, for marketing. We've highlighted quite a few, but again, it's really about, okay, what do you want to achieve? What are you doing and your company or your department on a day-to-day? So what's having this clear goal, right? Not just randomly trying out things, but what you want to achieve, try this out, try a few different tools as well, right? So for example, that image you saw initially of the Mustang that was done in Midjourney, I tried this now also with the Dell E, but you don't get the same effect. It's a little bit more tricky, but again, tricky to get like the angle right. It didn't look as let's say as realistic for me. But again, it's just been launched, right? So you need to try these tools also over time. And then more deep diving, right? So of course there are tools. You saw in the beginning of the year when we did this research is many people were using the tools, but then they stopped because again, they didn't find ChatGPT gave the right output. So really having this more formal training with your team about, okay, how do we do effective prompting, right? What tools can we use for different use cases? And just having this hands-on daily practice and experimentation is crucial, right? So again, don't try it a few times, do it regularly, try different tools, share your learnings, and then start implementing a small internal project, right? Just do this maybe with a few people, share the benefits with maybe your leadership team, with other departments, and then you can go from a pilot to really scaling this up much more broadly. And of course, generally, that's the governance aspect. It's just having some kind of guidelines in place about tools that you use, not sharing sensitive data. There's an option in ChatGPT where you can say to not capture your data as well, right, in the settings. So there's all these small things you can definitely do with some guardrails in place within your entity. And again, AI, I really like to say that it is augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence, meaning we really should see this as a tool, right? As an amplifier, as a creative partner or a co-pilot, right? So it's not just about automating routine tasks and processes, but it's really about how can we use this to elevate our own thinking, right? Elevate our work, and also push these tools beyond their original purpose, right? Be creative with them as well. Lastly, this is an overused quote, but I still really like it, right? Saying that AI is not going to replace comms professionals, but comms professionals that do use AI are going to replace those that don't, right? It is coming, it is here, I mean, but it's definitely going to be embedded in everything we do. So we should just see how can we work with it and not against it. Yeah, lastly, not too much, but this QR code to download the AI and comms report we did early this year, which is still a really good read and a very relevant read. Of course, we do a lot of trainings, anything from virtual to on-site, from 1 hour to multi-day, from exec teams to full company-wide ones. We are still a PR, public affairs comms agency, right? We do a lot of research reports. for big brands, anything from the Ciscos to the Amazons, let's say. So industry research, trend analysis, use case definition, roadmap development, but also execution, right? Keeping teams up to date with monthly updates about what's happening in the industry and industry policy development. But also just general media relations and positioning your own company in the field and the domain of AI. So yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. You find my name if you search on LinkedIn, you'll find it, or just of course reach out on the website on sandpipercomms.com/contact. But yeah, thanks so much. This was really insightful. I'll leave to you as well, David, for a few final words.
Well, I think we have a few minutes for questions. We might not be able to take all of them, but let's try to take a few. Now, Rob, I noticed you've already started answering a few questions in the chat. And this always happens, something always goes wrong technologically. One of my screens has stopped working, Rob. So if you could actually read out the questions and take some, and if there are any for me, if you could pass them over to me.
Yep, I'm just answering a few about will we share the slides? So I said there will be a recording on YouTube, the website, ChatGPT Vision. You need to have ChatGPT 4 Plus, which is a minimal fee per month, basically, to get this access to like the DALL-E 3 and these kind of tool interface. Also to the GPTs, right, that David had shown. You do need the premium version for this one, but who knows, maybe in a few months they'll roll it out publicly or like limited version for that. James was initially asking about, other than data privacy, what are the benefits of paid enterprise versions of software? So David, I had said, of course, data security is the main one, right? But of course, it's not just that. It's also about when you have an enterprise version, right, within your own infrastructure, you can link up all the data of your company, right? It can be employee data, it can be, again, financial data, any reports, all the speeches of your CEO, all the interviews of your CEO, right? Tone of voice guidelines, etc. So really to get much more qualitative output is also a super big use case. But yeah, if there's anything you want to add on that one, David, feel free to.
No, that's good. And yeah, the other advantage is that you can train it on your own data and on your own knowledge base, which, for example, you could set up a GPT that has that's trained on all your company's data that your employees can access. Any more, Rob?
No, this is actually it for the questions. But of course, if anyone still has a question in the last 2 minutes we have, feel free to drop them in the chat or just reach out, right, to David and I. Happy to answer this over email as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you very much for your time. If you do have any questions for either of us, you can find Rob on LinkedIn. Many of you already have my email. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. We're available to answer any questions you might have. We hope you got a lot out of this. And as I said at the start, we just wanted you guys to get some inspiration as to what you can do and what the possibilities are, and get a bit excited as to what's possible. Learn about some strategies about implementing this technology in your organization and your comms practice. And then finally, just some practical use cases, some hands-on use cases that will inspire you to go out there and start exploring. And I hope that you all feel a bit more excited and confident and ready to go out there and master this technology.